Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra from TCO Performance Center. Matthew Coller and Sam Ekstrom with you. Remember, check out the Purple Insider podcast for longer conversations and purpleinsider.substack.com for our written work here from training camp. All right, Sam, let's get right into it. One of the most interesting storylines here at camp that we're watching is the cornerbacks, not only the cornerbacks who battle for position, the final spot potentially is up for grabs, but how the veterans are adapting, how the veterans are helping the young players. And one of those young players is Cameron Dantzler, who Mike Zimmer talked about today, needing to step on the field a little more often than he did last year. He was injured 3 separate times last season. He has attempted to bulk up, but he also missed time during minicamp. Dantzler so far looks like he's doing okay. He's moving around fine, does look a little bit bigger. I think this is a big year for Cameron Dantzler to battle it out with Bashaud Breeland for potentially the CB2 spot next to Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, and Dantzler has the health edge right now because he's coming off of injury and he's been in there. Bashaud Breeland still recovering from shoulder surgery. He's been very limited so far in camp. So Dantzler is the one who's on the field. But I think there are two very different parts of Cameron Dantzler's development. There's the physical part, which is staying healthy, getting bigger. He's added a little more muscle mass, as Patrick Peterson pointed out today. But then there's the mental part. Mike Zimmer also said he wants Cameron Dantzler to have more belief in himself. And I think that's legitimate. I think he lacked confidence in big moments last year. Sometimes was a little too indecisive, which led to breakdowns. A lot of times before the snap, misdiagnosing who he was guarding, getting confused. And that obviously led to some pretty big problems and late game meltdowns. So Dantzler needing to really take that step this year. I think that's someone who needed the offseason last year to really refine some of those finer points. Getting him in preseason games, even though he's a potential starter, I think is going to be pretty important to see what he can do there and just iron the things out. But, as we heard a lot too, Caller, having the veteran presences this year is huge. I mean, last year, Mike Hughes was the veteran, and he had very little experience of on his own. This year, it's Breeland, it's Alexander, it's Peterson, who are all in that veteran group that can, pass down their knowledge.
And Patrick Peterson talked at length about how he's trying to help some of the younger players. He used the example of pointing out that different formations indicate that there's different route combinations and that different releases mean different things. And it seems like they were missing that last year, where the oldest corner going into last year was, I believe, Mike Hughes at 24 years old. Well, that's a lot different now that Patrick Peterson is here and taking on that role. That was something that Mike Zimmer was not sure about earlier this offseason when they signed Patrick Peterson, whether he would want to take that role. But he said, when you have the knowledge, it's good to pass it on. And it seems that he's passing it on early on. And that, to me, has a chance to kind of permeate itself through the younger players. Now, the back end of the cornerback group, we've seen a lot of mixing and matching from the first team, second team, third team. But Chris Boyd, Harrison Hand, others, how are we assessing that sort of early on before the pads come on?
Yeah, today I noticed that they had sort of the starters on one field and they had the backups on another field. And on the starter field, they had a few key depth players. And I noticed that Harrison Hand was in that group. Chris Boyd was in the complete backup group, which tells me that maybe Harrison Hand has passed Chris Boyd. And Mike Zimmer hasn't talked as much about Hand, but he did talk about Boyd, and he kind of gave a compliment mixed with maybe a little criticism. He said that he's got all the talent in the world, but he's a little bit play-to-play. You don't know what's going to happen with Chris Boyd because he can space out sometimes, and he can, make a really good special teams play and then go out there on defense and get lost in the secondary. So again, for him, it's the mental part of the game. He's got the physical part kind of ironed out, but, figuring out where to be. And I loved Mike Zimmer painting the picture of they're in the meeting room. Mike Zimmer is talking to Patrick Peterson about something, and Chris Boyd is sitting there, with rapt attention, hearing Mike Zimmer, a longtime, defensive backs coach, teaching this Pro Bowl guy and Patrick Peterson and just sort of soaking it in, which is a dynamic they didn't have last year.
Now, on the other side of things, a guy that you have mentioned repeatedly here, both on this show and our podcast and so forth, KJ Osborn, a great catch on a deep bomb from Kirk Cousins that actually brought Kirk Cousins to do a huge fist pump after completing this pass. It brought what crowd was here to its feet, and KJ Osborn continues on a daily basis to make enough plays to keep us talking about him. And Clint Kubiak said when we talked to him earlier today that it's really about stacking practice after practice after practice. We have seen plenty of guys in the past, shout out Isaac Frichte and many others, who have gotten shout outs from the coaching staff after minicamp. Davion Davis, another classic, and then they get to training camp and they don't show out. So far, we are only 2 days in, KJ Osborn has done this, and he's got a long way to go, but he, I think, has shown huge strides as a wide receiver from where he was last year.
Yeah, I had a good talk with KJ Osborn today, one-on-one, and he talked about working out with Justin Jefferson in Florida all offseason. In their group under trainer Mo Wells were Stephon Diggs, Jarvis Landry, Leonard Fournette. So he's been around greatness like all summer, and I think he's kind of just absorbed a lot of what they were showing him. He's just a different guy. He's confident. He's catching everything. Still don't know about his chops as a punt returner, but with D.D. Westbrook sidelined still as he rehabs from an ACL, the door is open for KJ Osborn to sort of stamp his claim on that wide receiver 3. He's been getting a ton of run with the ones, just as much, if not more, than Chad Beebe today. And I just like what I've seen. How often do you see like Chad Beebe or BC Johnson get deep like KJ Osborn did today? That's a facet with his speed that I think he can bring.
Yeah, not often have we seen those two make any sort of difference deep down the field. And KJ Osborn was an explosive college player. That's why they wanted to bring him in. Last year was pretty tough for him, but maybe taking the next step. A couple other notes that I think people want to hear about every day. Kellen Mond, a tough day for Kellen Mond. Inaccurate when he threw the ball. He pulled the ball down a couple of times in 11-on-11 reps and didn't really take all that many 11-on-11 reps. And on the offensive line, we still saw Oli Udoh and Dakota Dozier mixing in and out. And that's something that we're just going to track. People are saying very nice things about Oli Udoh, that he's taken big steps forward. And we're going to find out, I think, Sam, whether this is a guy suddenly having a click in and them finding his position, or if it's more of a case of the team sort of last-ditch effort finding out if he fits somewhere or not.
Yeah, they really like his length and athleticism, and, I think we have to pay attention to it, until they make a decision on this. I guess it doesn't bode super well for Wyatt Davis, who now has to jump not just Dakota Dozier, but 2 people, presumably, if he wants to win that job. He's been taking most of his reps with the 2s. But Oli Udoh, kind of out of nowhere, has jumped into this competition, and apparently he told Mike Zimmer yesterday that he loved working at guard. So we'll see what happens.
I would also say that in 2017, we didn't know the final offensive line group until week 1. So this is a thing that is always fluctuating with this team. Anything else, Sam, that you took away from practice today other than it was hot and Greg Joseph made all of his kicks? I was standing right below them. They flew right over me, all of his kicks.
5 for 5. Cameron Smith with the first-team linebackers. Kirk Cousins throws a pick in red zone drills.
It was a great interception by Harrison Smith. That's it for us today from TCO Performance Center, Purple Insider Extra. Make sure you check out that other stuff I told you in the beginning, and we'll catch you tomorrow.